an environment where sometimes if someone's going to have a talk show, the people would say, what are you going to talk about? Well, is there topics out there? Are there topics out there? Have you opened the window? I mean, there's nothing that you can't talk about. And a man who's going to join me right here certainly has enough fodder on the slowest of days. So something like this, it will be 100 miles an hour, bar none. And I'm thrilled to announce that this Saturday, Newstalk Sauga 960, Greg Carrasco has brought his show 8 to 11 a.m. on Saturdays. So we say, hola, buenos días, ¿qué tal, güey?
Hola, carnal. ¿Cómo
carnal. See, you're Chileno. Do you say way? Do you use way like that? Like the Mexicanos?
No, we don't. We use other words like po, si po, no po, but that's a Chilean thing, right?
I'm thrilled. Hey, I'm thrilled to see you on the station. As I said, this is a long process, from starting from literally nothing to build something where basically everyone now, certainly on the air, has a substantial resume, long-term talk, or sometimes Q107, CFNY, you name it. And now here you are sitting on Saturdays. And I think it's fantastic because you certainly, hermano, have a lot to talk about.
I think that it was inevitable that I was going to go back to my talk radio roots, and I'm in great company. When I moved to TSN, I knew it wasn't a good fit. TSN is a great sports station, and what I do is different. And for almost 2 years now, we got away with it. It seems like the people were not listening to what I was doing, and it grew bigger. It grew bigger than they ever anticipated. But I think that it seems like Saga 960 is the last standing, true, honest conversation platform left in Ontario, and I had to join the movement. And here I am. Slack Your Nation moved full force onto 960, and this Saturday, I'm super excited, Mike. I'm super excited to bring the entire show here, something that we built over the last 13 years, just to have an honest conversation about everything. Why not, right?
Well, and it's a show where you find, some to the right, some to the left. It's whatever, do you believe in the conspiracies? You got conspiracy people. It really, and there's no shortage, certainly, of topics. And it's funny, certainly on social media, where you see people voice a lot of opinions. And I'll be honest, I'm 58, my whole life, mostly a couple of years in the States, but for the most part, raised as a Canadian in Canada, in a small town, Stouffville, Ontario is where I'm from. So my perspective is of that, as is most that I see on social media. So when they talk about this kind of political unrest that we have seen, this anxiety that we've had about government and convoys, and then I'll see them make these comparisons to other things in the world. And I'm like, well, if you've never lived in other places or been to other places in the world, to say that the convoy was our Tiananmen Square, I'm like, well, okay. I don't remember Tiananmen Square any bouncy castles or hot tubs. I don't remember any ball hockey amongst the tanks. Like, I think, and then you hear the Hitlerisms and so on. I'm like, you really have to get a little more perspective. And that's something you have, knowing that you literally had to flee a country of origin, go to different parts of the world, where your perspective, quite frankly, is one that I want to entertain and listen to more, because
I think it's very simple, Mike. Anyone that called what happened in Ottawa, terrorism, has never seen terrorism, and you have been tricked. Because, having lived under Pinochet for my whole life that I lived in Chile, I can tell you with a pretty reasonable level of certainty that what you saw in Ottawa was just a group of working class people just trying to be heard. And whether you agree with them or not, that's not the point. The point is that you had tens of thousands of people wanting to have a conversation. And, somebody said it best. I mean, Martin Luther King says that a protest is the voice of the unheard. And what happened over there was a very clear indication that we are starved for good dialogue, for communication. And whenever you try to squash the dissenting voices, you end up with radicalized people. And that's exactly what took place in Chile. The first thing that happened, you start censoring the communication. The media wasn't allowed to have an honest conversation with the people. And the reason why I think that is so important for us to have honest conversation is because through dissenting opinions, through contrarian opinions, you can build an opinion that makes sense. But if all you hear is people just saying, yeah, you're right, yes, you're right, yes, you're right, and that person that disagrees with me is a radical, it's a supremacist, it's like, come on, guys, really? Is this what it's come down to? Ad hominem attack just to invalidate the opposing viewpoint? I think that we can do better than that. And this is the reason why I decided to join 960. I do believe that this radio station, which is fascinating, Mike, this little radio station that came out as a really honest thought is bringing such an amount of attention to just conversation, which is what you do here every morning.
It's something that, when I look at, as I said, some days I said this, the art of debate, which is very, very important. Hey, it used to be a big thing in universities. To be on the debate team wasn't that you were a nerd. You were actually kind of treated almost like you were on a football team, because right. the art of the conversation, the art of exchanging ideas. You come on a show and let's say, I know for a fact, again, when you have strong opinions like I do, there are people you go into and like, okay, I don't like this guy. I know he says a lot of things. I'm going to disagree with everything he says. And then you listen to it. And if you're really open about it, you're like, well, there were a couple of good things in there that I actually do agree with. Well, let's find some middle ground and make everything better. That's how it's supposed to work. There's a civility to it in the exchange of ideas. And somehow we've gotten to a place that you're right, I'm wrong, and I can't agree with anything you say. And to go back to those Chilean roots, you talk about Pinochet, in trying to make these comparisons, I mean, we've never lived in a country where maybe my father says something that's considered to be, something a dissident would say, and then the next night he's gone. These people disappear. They're rounded up. That's not that's the extreme. That's what we're talking about here. And that's what you try to avoid by conversation to avoid that.
I think that it is impossible to arrive to a general consensus. I mean, that's the whole point of having a parliament, which is, by the way, been shut down for 2 years, in which two sides just talk at each other, and they argue. Great, because I believe that the solution to crappy ideas is sunlight. Bring the bad ideas to sunlight. Let's debate them. Let's punch holes in those arguments. And together as a community, we can arrive to better conclusions. But when you shut down conversation, is the very essence of disintegration of our society. And man, people like yourself, they have been doing this for some time now. And I'll tell you, man, this radio station is going to blow up simply because we are allowed to talk about the things that nobody else wants to talk about. Why? Because they're considered to be controversial. What would be life without controversy, Mike? Oh. What would be life without it?
Or marriage.
That's why I'm single. Wow, not so single anymore.
We're in conversation with Greg Carrasco here on Newstalk Sauga 960. Raul Mike Richards talking about that Greg Carrasco show, which will be Saturdays now on Newstalk Sauga 960, 8 to 11, where basically anything goes. People are going to say, is it a car show? How much of a car show is it really?
Well, the reality is this, that I retract back to my areas of studies, and I've been in the car industry for the last 30 years. So now I can provide the consumer with a pretty objective look when it comes to their automotive decisions. So that's my area of expertise. But my areas of interest, I applied to York University, Mike, and I'm going back full time to study politics at York. And I start classes in September. Why? Because I do believe that it's important that I pursue my interest outside of what I do for a living. This is my job. My radio show is my work. And in order for me to do a good job at my work, I need to be informed. I do a tremendous amount of reading on all sorts of different things. I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, and I try to bring all those things onto the radio show just to have a conversation with the common folk, with the person that is gliding through life, freaked out, afraid of knowing what's going to happen to our kids, what's going to happen with our taxes, what's going to happen to our capital gains on our primary home. Those are the people that I want to talk to on Saturday mornings, with the basis that my radio show will teach you how not to waste money on cars, because by and large, cars are a giant waste of money. So the show is always run by the listener, Mike. Those callers that call in essentially tell me what to talk about every single Saturday morning for the last 13 years.
It's funny being in studio with Hoist Gracie years ago, and he came in there, and he was a very interesting guy. And I said, "Yeah, that was back in the early days. You know, you'd come out with the gi on and everything, and it seemed like the match would last hours, where you just be like grabbing a guy, two guys in pajamas, and it take hours to get like a result." And he looks at me and goes, "You don't like me?" "Oh no, I really like it."
It's funny because, and sorry to interrupt you. One of the things that I love the most about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that you never really get to know somebody until you fight with them, and the mat never ever lies, and you get to see what's inside. And I think that as a society, we never get to know someone until we argue with them. When you argue with them, you get to see what's inside, and you see the depth of their convictions, the depth of their knowledge, the depth of their reading, and also how dirty they fight. And you know what I've seen coming out of our government office, when you can't stand and have a conversation with a group of protesters, and you discredit the entire protest by calling them something that you clearly know is not true, then you see, that's not a good person leading our country right now. And perhaps we need to make better choices. And I think that there's a lot of people that are like-minded right now, willing to have or entertain that conversation.
Yeah, and I'm also a little biased too. The 6.5 years I spent in Calgary, literally as an Albertan, and I still feel that, I kind of still am an Albertan. I kept a couple of houses out there, and I keep in touch with the people. They're still kind of sad that I left, and I'm sad to not be there. Do I agree with everything the Albertans say? No, I don't. And even if I was on the air there, I'm pretty honest that way. Not everything they say I agree with, but to understand their concerns, their problems, their troubles that don't get listened to, their voice clearly not being heard at all or even acknowledged in Ottawa. So therefore, the only way out, Greg, is conversation, is to come to a middle ground by listening to what they're saying. But to shut them down, make them seem like hillbillies and yahoos, like a bunch of rednecks that have alternative and very divisive philosophies is dirty. It's, you said, fighting dirty. That, look, talking about fighting. So we're Irish people in this household, so every time we'd watch the UFC, they go, "Well, so you're a Connor guy?" "Of course I am, you idiot." It's precision over power. You're not listening to me, and yet if he was any other nationality, I hate his guts, because just some of what he represents, there's that whole thing. It was like, I don't know if you could actually stand being in the room with the guy for 5 seconds, what he says. Now, a lot of that was intended to be humor of what he was saying and the Irish humor, but and there's no doubt there was nothing more entertaining, because right now in UFC, I can watch some great fighters, great skills, great mixed martial arts backgrounds, but right now it's just kind of a little bit of a lull. I think you really have to be a little more hardcore to enjoy it. But you're right. There's no hiding in that octagon or on the mat. You cannot. Your tricks, your little whatever it is, that facade disappears once that bell goes off.
And you can only fight the way you practice. There is a lot of people that think that they can go and step up in the octagon and make a name for themselves so they can win a fight because of attitude. It doesn't work that way. If you don't spend thousands and thousands of hours on the mat, fighting with people that have the ability to put you to sleep eternally, you have no idea what it means to get into an actual physical confrontation. And Jiu-Jitsu has been a great humbler, because I have been running companies for the better part of the last 20 years right now. And at any given point, there is 70, 80, 100 people working for me, and it's very easy to believe my own nonsense. So when you go to the mat, you get to mop the floors, you get to train with a 60-year-old that can put you to sleep, and the humility brings you to a different level of understanding of your own humanity. And that's why I do believe that jiu-jitsu has been one of the greatest things that found me. You don't find jiu-jitsu finds you. But if you translate that into communication, I think that it's very important for us to understand that the notion of us being wrong has to be in the forefront of everything. What if I'm wrong? Unfortunately, our school system has been radicalizing people. Instead of teaching them how to think, we are teaching our children what to think. And that is creating a big problem. But it's a problem that we are going to solve just like the way you eat an elephant. One bite at the time, one phone call at the time. And what started as an automotive show now has turned into a lifestyle show that I'm super proud of being the head of with Slacker Nation. People know that I talk about all sorts of different things, and nothing is off the table. And when I resigned my position at TSN a couple of weeks ago on air, I made it very simple. I cannot have a radio show with my name on it if the content is not my content. I will respect the format of the station, but I'm not going to disrespect myself and my beliefs and my listeners for the last 13 years. So I had to bring the show to a platform that allow me to explore. I don't want to make it about politics, but I want to be free to talk about it. And that's the whole essence of what I'm doing.
Well, it's the backbone, the philosophy of this radio station. It truly is. So the fact that you're here, I think it's a great landing. It's kind of where you belong. And so I get what I say. Muchas gracias, Po.
Sí, Po.
Sí, Po. Okay.
That's awesome. Well,
I am so thrilled. Hasta luego, Po. And we will talk again very soon.
We will. Thank you so much for having me on the show. And I'm looking forward to talking to everyone. It's a live show. People can call in, tune in to Saga 960 every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Slacker Nation congregates. Mike, thank you so much, man. Thank you for having me on the show.
That is Greg Carrasco doing it right. So once again, this Saturday, 8 to 11, the start of what is going to be a very successful run. It is 8:55.